The Crown Tundra has officially dropped, or is about to drop depending on when you're watching this. It's the big expansion to Sword and Shield we've been waiting for all year, so to celebrate, today we're going to be checking out some awesome facts and tidbits about the expansion that you may have not known before, and it just might make the Crown Tundra even better than you thought. So with that said, let's get right to it. Let's start things off with Peony. Peony is a mentor-type character introduced in the Crown Tundra expansion that appoints you, the player, as the head of his exploration team upon you arriving in this new area. And much like many other characters in the Pokemon universe, he gets his name from a flower, namely, well, the peony. It's always been interesting how Game Freak has gone with this naming scheme, but it certainly fits in this case. For one, the peony is a flower that can endure very cold temperatures, and even needs to go through a cold season in order to be able to bloom in the spring. Very fitting for the name of a character debuting in such a cold place like the Crown Tundra. Furthermore, the peony flower also has some cultural standing, particularly in China, where it is known as, amongst other things, the King of the Flowers, which, as you can probably tell, is a very fitting name for a character that's debuting in the Crown Tundra, which just goes to show that even though it seems kind of unusual, that the name Peony is a very, very well thought out and intentional name for this character that is debuting in this expansion. Another noteworthy thing about this new area, besides all of the cold, is the big focus on legends and legendary Pokemon. Not only are we seeing several new legendary Pokemon making their debut in this expansion, but every single legendary Pokemon in the whole series is also making an appearance as well, and will be catchable through the underground Dynamax raids. While cool for sure, it might be easy to not think much of this and basically just chalk it up to a game mechanic that Game Freak wanted to include. However, there is also most likely an intentional and specific reason for Game Freak including it in this expansion, and that reason is most likely Scotland itself. We know that the Crown Tundra is based on Scotland, and Scotland certainly has a thing for its legendary creatures. There is, of course, the Loch Ness Monster, which is probably the most famous mythological folktale type creature that there is, and for heaven's sakes, the national animal of Scotland is the unicorn of all things, which really helps to drive the point home that this is probably the inspiration behind the Crown Tundra being so legendary-filled itself. And speaking of all those legendary Pokemon that are being added, the focus is really being put on the royal theme in that department, as a lot of the Pokemon in general that are being added in this expansion are royal in nature. There's of course Calyrex, who is literally the king Pokemon, there's Galarian Slowking, Nidoking, and Nidoqueen, the two new Regis, which fit right in considering Regi is Latin for royal, Tyrantrum, who is described as acting like a king in the Pokedex, and the list goes on from there. It's really cool to see just how intensely they commit to various themes like this, especially when you dig a bit deeper into the finer details. Now that we've brought up the Regis though, there's one thing I wanted to bring up about Regidrago in particular. The new Dragon-type addition to the Regi family has, as you can pretty easily see, two jaw-like arms that when they come together on either end, create the head of a dragon itself. However, the dragon emulation does not stop there, as even Regidrago's body in all likelihood is based around dragons, particularly the crystal balls and or pearls that dragons are often depicted carrying or protecting, showing that no part of this Pokemon's design was created without some well thought out detail put into it. From one new legendary to another, Calyrex is seemingly an even bigger deal than Regidrago in this expansion, as it is the box art legendary for this new adventure. And while this tidbit I'm going to share about it isn't a fact in the sense that it's been outright confirmed by an official source, it's a very possible and interesting facet to Calyrex's design. On the Pokemon Sword and Shield website, it states that Calyrex once ruled all of Galar in ancient times. We of course know that Galar is based on the UK, and that includes the Scotland-based Crown Tundra. With this in mind, it's possible that this detail is inspired by King James VI. James was originally King of Scotland, just as Calyrex resides in the Crown Tundra, and long ago, as in the 1600s when he was around, James also became king of nearly all the UK, just as Calyrex was king of all of Galar, as he, in the early 1600s, inherited kingship of both England and Ireland, making him the ruler of all three and nearly all of the UK, once again, just like Calyrex. It's also worth noting that Calyrex's beads around its neck very much resemble the frilly collars that were worn by royalty in England and elsewhere around that time period, including King James VI himself. And while we're on the subject of royalty, I also have another interesting tidbit to share that I did talk about in a previous video, but it's actually kind of mind-blowing, so I just want to get it out there, I'm sorry. With Galar being based on the UK, and this latest expansion being called the Crown Tundra, it draws your mind to the UK's crown jewels. And there is a crown in this collection of crown jewels known as the Imperial State Crown. This crown is decked out with all kinds of precious gemstones, and as fate would have, those gemstones in particular would consist of rubies, sapphires, emeralds, diamonds, and pearls. Now, not only is the mention of diamonds and pearls interesting, considering all the murmuring about Diamond and Pearl remakes possibly coming soon, but rubies, sapphires, and emeralds being a part of the equation as well could also explain the otherwise random-looking addition of the Hoenn starters in this expansion, as they are the lone set of starters that are being added. Moving along though, we haven't brought up something on the Galarian legendary birds yet, so let's cover something on one of them. Galarian Articuno specifically is getting its own signature move in the Crown Tundra, and it is known as Freezing Glare. Despite its name, Freezing Glare is a psychic type move, but true to its name, it is still able to freeze its target, making it the only psychic type move in existence that is capable of doing so. We might as well cover Galarian Slowking too while we're at it, and boy oh boy, does Galarian Slowking have something cool to it. So, we know right off the bat that this Pokemon is a Poison Psychic type, obviously got bit by Shellder on the head, and now, in this Galarian form, it almost seems as if the Shellder is taking over the Slowpoke that it has bitten in this form. But there is also another aspect to Galarian Slowking that is just too cool to ignore. While again not being outright confirmed at this point, it's very possible that Galarian Slowking is based on a witch, as in the witches that were famously hunted all throughout Europe and into North America in the 15 and 1600s. Just to list a few things, it is known as the Hexpert Pokemon. They've been observed uttering incantations to each other according to the Sword and Shield website. They chant mysterious spells when using moves in battle. They have a signature move called Eerie Spell, and they have a, as of right now, signature ability called Curious Medicine. Sounds pretty witchy to me. Additionally, there were also 5 great, as they were referred to, witch trials that took place in Scotland specifically, showing that this whole idea is pretty prominent in the area where Galarian Slowking is based. However, you might be thinking that the witches that were all hunted in these witch trials were primarily female, and Slowking, even though it can be female, is fairly distinctively masculine given the king title, so this can't possibly be right, can it? While that does indeed bring up a good point, the final nail in the coffin to this are the eyes of the Shellder that is covering Slowking's true face. They are very distinctively feminine in nature, and why else would that be other than to bring home the concept that Galarian Slowking is meant to be a witch from the infamous European witch trials? Well, those were some interesting facts and tidbits about the Crown Tundra that hopefully you learned by watching this video. If you're interested in more Crown Tundra and Pokemon content, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet for more of that kind of content all the time. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify, or check out my Pokemon Cardinal project here on YouTube if you haven't yet, both of which immensely support videos just like this. With that being said, I will be back with some more Crown Tundra content very, very soon. So until then, as always, I love you guys very much, and I will smell you guys later.